Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Increasing Influence with Dave Cooper and Miles Biggs of Big Idea. Listen, we got a great show today. What do you think, Miles?
I'm ready to dive right into it. Head first.
Well, we can't dive in head first. We gotta welcome everybody. We gotta tell everybody to hit that like and share button. We cannot grow our influence. We cannot grow our branding without the help of everybody watching us out there. So we really would appreciate it if you could please hit that like and share button so we can bring more people into our world and share great ideas and continue to get wonderful, great hosts and guests like Jenny Mehlman today. Jenny, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I mean, this is pretty awesome. So, Jenny, we met in the home building industry, you and I. You have been in marketing and branding for quite some time. I mean, you're a huge advocate for helping builders build their brands and build their business through improving their client experience. You've been in multiple industries, so you come with a wealth of knowledge. And I think that if anybody's watching this show and you want to hear from somebody that has worked for some very, very large businesses out there and learn how to increase your influence and build your brand, whether it's personal or company wide, Jenny is the person to listen to. So how was that intro?
That was so sweet of you. Thank you. Very, very, very kind. Well, very high bar.
I love it. So, Jenny, how about giving all of us a quick introduction? Like I always say, I want to hear everything from childbirth up until the present time within 5 minutes.
You got it. I'm gonna probably not start at childbirth. I'll start in the middle. I've been super fortunate in my career to work for some of the finest companies. I started in the CPG world, so consumer packaged goods, really exploring what brand was all about, brand management roles, running different businesses, understanding the ins and outs of not only business, but truly what a brand is and what it should be. Did a little bit of time running not only marketing, but also sales and seeing how those intertwine together, truly working cross-functionally, learning the business to consumer world. Made the leap into building materials where I got to see a lot of not only business to business, but also business to consumer, so B2B to C, and got to spend time working with some of the leading builders and architects, contractors, developers. Really, what a cool industry you guys get to play in. It's not about the materials, but you get to make people's homes. There is no finer industry, and one that is so ripe and ready for innovation and change. It is such a cool time to be part of it. And so really have gotten to explore what brand means, what product means, how they should interact with one another. Just a really cool history of understanding how to build a brand, how to drive innovation, how to deliver results in line with setting strategies and goals for companies. It's been a really cool journey over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been. I mean, well, listen, I know it's been a cool journey because I know some of the places you used to be and absolutely love the work that you guys were doing there. And I think that's me pounding on your door. Listen to me, Jenny. Listen to me, Jenny. We're out here. Miles is out here, right? Running around at different places. So, Miles, I know you have a ton of questions. I was going to say we'll bring out the boxing gloves, but it's really not a fight. It's just a good spar because we got two branding, experts on. We got digital branding, and then we got Jenny who helps people create their brands and what have you. Miles, how do you want to kick it off today? I'm going to let you do the first question.
Sure. Yeah, so I like to kick it off with that word, brand, right? That's a big word, can mean many things. So from your perspective and your experience, how do you go about defining brand? And what do you think is the wrong way to define brand in what you've seen?
That's a great question. So I think for me, brand is sort of pervasive in everything we do. I really choose to personify the word brand. I think it underlays it. It often gets confused with products or even the word product brand. A brand should be the premise of what a company does or lives or breathes, right? It's the values. Everybody should be living what the brand means. So if you think about a brand as a person, how do you behave? How do you choose to grow, i.e. innovate? How do you bring something to life? How do you run supply chain? How does the team work together? All of those are the underlying part of the brand. I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek, and he talks a lot about your why. That's the notion of personifying something. Why are you doing what you're doing? That's the essence of your brand.
Right.
I think it then comes to life in things like brand marketing or product marketing. It comes to life in sales. So there's a difference between what it is, the why, if you will, and how it comes to life. It absolutely comes to life in consumer or builder or business marketing and growth marketing. And there's a ton of buzzwords that are flying around. But the essence is the why are you doing what you're doing, which
Right.
is bigger always than the profit that you're making. Ultimately, if you're doing something right, you're going to be making a profit. But it's that inherent, what problem are you solving almost?
Yeah. It's not Simon Sinek, right? Maybe I'll get it right. It's not what you do, it's why you do it.
It's
right?
why you do it. Yep. Why, then how, and then finally the what, which is the product, or in other industries, the service that you're providing.
Right. So does that play into like who you are as a person, an individual, a company? That was one of the topics, that we talked about before the show, like defining a brand. How do you define a brand? How do you kind of have to define who you are first to define the brand? Is that accurate?
You absolutely do. And I think a company can have multiple brands in it, and that's the company brand followed by the product brands, right? And they all need to ladder up into one another. But your company should define why it's doing what it's doing, and then each product brand defines what role it's playing in that broader company why. And so they're sort of the building blocks in the company why. But if you're uncertain of why your company is doing what it's doing, and again, it's not to sell products,
Right.
it's something bigger than that. And this is an amazing industry, right? You're in the business of building somebody home, or building something. Yeah, Dave, I remember you had posted last week, I think, about how quickly some offsite construction company had made hospitals that were in need, right?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good thing to be an industry that can come together immediately to build an emergency service for someone. Like, that's an amazing why. And so that notion of the ability to be in the place that somebody feels safe, like there are a lot of reasons why this industry exists, and profit is an effect of that, not a driver for it.
Sure. What do you think, Miles?
I was going to follow up on that. How do you think people uncover it? Right. I'm sure listening, like, yeah, it makes sense. Sure. My why. I keep hearing it everywhere. Why? But what's a process to unearth that sort of soul searching that has to take place to understand why you show up to work every day? What's this greater purpose and intention behind the brand? How do you encourage people to find it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So there's a lot of digging, and I sort of look at it in a couple different ways. The starting point is inherently you, and so the you is your leadership, or leadership. It's the person that is driving the starting point. Because if you fundamentally understand why you exist, that helps a lot. The next part is the consumer trends, and so it's really easy, especially in a more B2B focused business, to focus on builders, but they're building something for somebody, and so understanding why somebody wants to live somewhere, and so there's research that has to be done. The next part, though, is within the value chain, and so there are builders, there are architects. What problems can you help them solve? And again, it goes back to research. And when you ask somebody, you can't expect that they're going to tell you the answer. You have to really listen and hear maybe what's not being spoken. But similar to how when packaged goods tell you, yeah, I want to live a healthier lifestyle, what does that mean to somebody? You have to look and understand what data suggests. It's a combination of psychology and data working together. We live in a really data-driven world. You can't always listen to every number. You have to hear what they're not saying as much as what they are saying. But there's really nice ways to find insights all over the place. You're always looking for a problem to solve. You have to find a problem, and the world is full of them. You have to figure out what that one is and how you do it better than somebody else.
I love it. We're going to jump into, what problem are we solving as the next topic. But right now, Miles, we need to give some shout outs, and we need to say, hit that like and share button, please. We have Jenny Mehlman on. a brand creator, somebody that's been in our industry of home building for a lot of years, really understands our industry, but more importantly, understands how to increase influence and increase your brand, whether it's on an individual level or it is on a company-wide level. Jenny has had experience in all aspects of that. So please hit that like and share button. All right, Miles, let's see who's in the comments. What do you think?
Let's do it.
You never know. Oh, we got Mark Bare Naked Willie from Facebook. Keep building the live influence at Dave Cooper. Well, thank you very much. We have George Ryman. Happy National Left-Handers Day from hot Phoenix, Arizona. Thank you so much, George, for joining us. Oh, Jennifer and Jenny. Welcome, Jenny Mehlman. From consumer packaged goods to home building. Can't wait to learn some pro tips in marketing. And we have, you may know this guy, John Jaworski. Hey, what's happening, John? I know John's dying to chime in. We're listening, John. Go ahead, because John never has anything to say. I love it. I love it. Love it. All right. So, and George said we're having a much better connection on Facebook than LinkedIn, for whatever that means. So we got a bunch of people out there watching right now. So listen, we haven't really gotten into the meat and the potatoes of this yet, but chime in with your questions, chime in with your comments. Now's your chance to ask an industry expert all of these questions. So for those of you that are out there, also let us know where you're tuning in from today. I bet there's some of you overseas right now. All right, Miles. Who are you? We talked about, right? Now we're into problems. You know, what problem are you solving? That was the first question.
That was. And
how do you know what your problem is? I got a lot of problems, but nobody wants to hear them.
You can't build a product around them either, right?
I know. I mean, I'd be wealthy if I could build a product around all of my problems. And I guess that's why people build great products, because they figure out a problem and they come up with a solution to it. But how does one define, whether on an individual basis or on a consumer public company basis or whatever the case is, how does one say, well, this is the problem we're solving? We have a product, but how do we market that product and market the problem solving part of it?
It was interesting. I was talking to a young entrepreneur yesterday in the fashion industry, actually, so completely separate. And she said to me she was talking about a problem with a bunch of classmates of hers, and it was a bunch of boys in a female industry asked her afterwards if she was going to go into business. And she's like, that's how I knew that there was something there, when they immediately recognized I had a solution to something that was bigger than myself. And I think when you're looking at an industry that you sort of sit here and you throw a problem out, and a bunch of people who maybe aren't in that industry sort of commonly nod and they understand what you're saying, you're probably onto something, right? Within housing, there's no doubt that there's something going on with affordability, however you define it, whether it's low income or, hey, the essential workers, the nurses, et cetera, can't live where they work. If you have a solution and somebody says, oh yeah, I understand how that helps allow people to live in my community, and they get it right away, you're probably solving a relevant problem. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes there's a pretty common gut check. I look at the airlines and I think to myself, it's pretty funny when you think about the airlines. Was it 10 years ago, they took away pretzels, right? They just stopped serving pretzels. Horrible. And that was everybody's reaction. Yeah. And then 2 years ago or whatever, they pay the 10 cents it cost them and start handing back the little bags of pretzels, and everybody thinks this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. But the reality is everybody has that same very positive emotion to something that costs them very little money on the surface level. They're solving a problem, which is the airlines make me feel like I'm not valued, and this little bag of pretzels suddenly starts making me feel like I'm slightly valued to them when I'm flying in coach. And so that notion of that underlying emotional tie and a problem go together, and you have some instinctual response. And so I think, what problem are you solving? Can I explain it simply? And does the general population understand it, even if it's not their problem? Are often a really good gut check. If you can go further to the target market and they fully get it, like, yes, I want in, you're clearly onto a problem.
Yeah.
So what if they understand it and they see the value in your solution, but they're not ready for it yet? Like, you're ahead of your time.
That's a great one. what happens then? The product tends not to work. A lot of times, if you're really ahead of your time, they do understand it. They don't necessarily see the value. So I get it. And like, yeah, that might be a nice thing, and they'll come back with all of the barriers in place.
Right.
And so some of the time, if they're busy proposing the barriers back to you, either you're ahead of your time or you haven't figured out how to fit into their lives yet. And both of those things are very real, because timing's huge in problem solving. If you haven't figured out how to fit into their lives yet, it doesn't mean that there's not a solution. It means you haven't yet crafted the right solution, because in building the solution, you've added more problems than you've solved. So your solution yet isn't all the way there. It's not that you haven't uncovered a problem. It's just that the problem's solution isn't fixed yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You haven't gone far enough.
Right.
It's not easy enough to use.
So in the instance of the airline taking away the pretzels and then reintroducing the pretzels, is that them creating a problem to just solve a problem and rebrand their marketing? I mean, could you say that is somewhat intentional?
It's a great question. I don't think it was driven by that. I think they created a problem because they were solving a different problem, which was financial.
Right.
And maybe didn't understand the impact at the time, or they didn't care about the impact. Both are not good. So I don't think that was their intention, but they did solve the problem. I do think other companies create a problem to solve it, which is never good. Right. So if you're uncertain of the problem you're solving and you're going to go and try and create a problem to solve it, you're not onto something strong enough yet. Right. If you come up with a product and you try and sell somebody on a problem they don't have, but you try and make it bigger than it is, and create chaos, you may get some short-term wins, but it's easy enough for somebody to come in and be like, hey, wool's over your eyes, let me help you uncover it. That's right. Not really a problem you have. And so I think that's just something to be mindful of.
It's funny. It reminds me, like when we talk about these things, I think back to the guy who created the little umbrella for the martini, or for the drinks, for the margaritas. Now, who in their right mind thought that was a problem? That I need to create shade for my ice, right? I guess. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, it's hard. It's really hard. You don't know what truly it is. So
that's a great one, because did somebody create that with the mindset of creating shade for their ice, or did they find the right segment who said, hey, I think there's a notion for exploratory design in drinking, right? Because there's all of these really cool bars out there that think about, how do I design a drink differently and want it to look pretty? And there's a whole consumer base that really appreciates that. You may not be that person. And so a huge part about brand and product design is being perfectly clear on who you're targeting.
Right.
Because you and I may not appreciate something and somebody else absolutely does. There has to be big enough group that they're willing to pay for it and see the value in it, but it doesn't have to be everybody. You're never going to get everybody. You don't want to appeal to everybody, because if you appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody. We all have our own personalities for a reason. But that notion of who and why matters a great deal. And so understanding the population, understanding segments. The housing industry is one that is fascinating, because traditionally, every conversation I've ever had segments off of demographics and uses age. And there are a lot of ways to segment. Why not necessarily segment off of lifestyle? And just because you're old or young, you still may live in a lifestyle of only 2 people. And so what do you need if there's only 2 people in a household? And there's a lot of 20-somethings and a lot of 60-somethings who live with 2 people in their household that are dramatically different in age, but have very similar needs, because they have different storage and other things like that. So there's just a lot of ways to think about things.
Yeah, for sure. Miles, what's your take on this? Because with your company and Mojo Active, you guys spend a lot of time in the housing industry talking about these things.
Yeah, well, so much of it goes back to where we initially started this conversation, right? How you end up branding and the problem that you're solving depends on why you're even showing up to play in the first place, right? Because you could try to solve every problem, but some of those problems might not be on brand for you, right? It doesn't fit. So there's an infinite number of ways to solve an infinite number of problems. It's just how effective you are. I think a lot of it does go back to that overarching purpose of why you even want to solve it. And I think most people just run after big money problem. So hopefully big money solution, I want to do it, but then it doesn't work that well because it's just not that right fit for whatever reason.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, there's a lot of people I'm just watching that are tuned in right now that have their own companies, have started companies, have worked for a lot of startup companies. It'd be interesting to get their take. I'd like to know how they solve their marketing problems. How do they come up with what they're doing? Like Adam White, he does this whole purple spray coating, for air barrier and everything. I mean, I watch the guy, he sprays cars down with this stuff, because you can peel it off. It's just, he goes about his marketing in a much different way, where people sit there and I think it was an Audi, and they're like, are you crazy? And then he just peels it right off. So yeah. No, I agree. And I think with the housing and just marketing in general and the brand, I mean, is it one person or is it a team of people that typically come up with the solution? Is it a team approach?
My perspective is it's always a team. And it's a cross-functional team, because the best solutions are often take into account everybody's area of expertise, right?
Right.
I can once you've established your brand and you all are working towards the same thing and you know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, I can come up with the greatest communication in the world, and you can have the best salesperson in the world, but if I can't make what I'm trying to make, it makes no difference. Or if what we're trying to make isn't profitable and we don't have the right pricing strategy, it makes no difference. Or if I don't understand what the builder or architect actually values, we're missing the link. And so the ability to bring everybody together on a very regular basis in the same room, everybody pointed in the same direction.
Right.
The best teams I've ever worked on and with are all cross-functional. That everybody is an expert in their own right and rowing in the same direction, and aware of the information that you would think. And the amount of time I've spent in plants is huge. And they used to joke in the CPG world that I never got the marketing tour, that I always had the manufacturing tour. But when we wanted to change out a jar of pasta sauce, I had to understand the implications of slowing down the line, because they impacted our P&L or they would impact our pricing strategies. And that was just something we had to understand, and our product developer had to understand what would go into the mix differently if we did things. So, you work together, and you work together really, really well.
Yeah, so that's a good segue, because up till now, a lot of the focus on our branding conversation has been external, but there's a lot of internal implications towards the definition of a brand or how a brand is delivered. So what would you say are the top sort of behind the scenes branding elements, right, that not everybody thinks of when they think brand?
Yeah. It's a great question. I think a strong leadership first and foremost, right? If the leaders aren't clear in who they are, what the brand stands for, and living it and breathing it every day, it doesn't matter. It's sort of, if you're not being who you are, then there's nothing authentic about it. And so that gets lost. I would say cross-functional teamwork is critical. Teamwork in general, but cross-functional teamwork, everybody showing up to the table and bringing what they know, but being open and listening, is really, really huge. And then solving a problem, like really understanding what it is that you're there to do.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, this term sort of servant leadership gets thrown out a lot. And I don't think it's about leadership as much as, are you there to deliver something to improve the world in some way, shape, or form? Are you making it better for somebody tomorrow than it is today? Because at the end of the day, the brand should be doing that, and everybody. And it's not that it's a happy-go-lucky world, but we should kind of continuous improvement, innovation, and those two things both go together.
Yeah, the best way
I don't know. What do you think?
Best way I've heard it put is that every company has a mission, but the best brands are on a mission.
That's great.
Not just having the written statement up on the wall in the handbook you can refer to, right? But it's that daily, going back to the why, where you're on a mission to accomplish something much bigger than any one person or any product. At the end of the day, the entire world will be different because your brand existed. What is that mission? And that's what's going to get the whole team jazzed up and excited to over deliver on every aspect of the production line with jars of sauce or out there in a sales environment, right? It's what is the mission you're on, not just your mission.
I mean, you think about the best brands that exist, right? And they're across the board that Nike just came out last week, 2 weeks ago with that phenomenal ad. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but they don't talk about the Nike products. Right. Apple, when it launched the iPod 15 years ago, never talked about the product, right? It showed this beautiful artistic thing. These brands are so strong, and I know that they get used and used and used over and over again, but they're so strong because they make it about far more than the product. These are the ones, and you can kind of do it again. I remember reading in school about Southwest as a case study, and why this brand did what it did. And to this day, whether or not you fly Southwest Airlines doesn't matter. You can appreciate what it's done from a branding perspective. I think, still not charging for bag fees. Like, they know why they do what they do, and it's about putting their flyers first.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. There's two things I want to get into, but the first one, there's the mission of the company, like Miles brought up, right? And they're on a mission. Does core values play into all of that the company has as well? I mean, because it's just not about the mission statement, right? It's a culture and a core value that I think that also helps drive a lot of these companies to be successful. When you look at Apple, or you look at a Chevy person or a Ford person, right? Everybody has their direction on what they believe in. How important is the core values and the buy-in to the people that are part of your organization to drive that whole marketing concept?
It's huge, because at the end of the day, you can't rely on the leaders alone, right? The bulk of the work doesn't get done with the leaders. It gets done with everybody else.
Right.
And that's what great leadership is about, is not relying on your CEO or your CFO to be the ones doing the work or even driving the decisions.
Yeah.
Great work is done by grateful teams, and they're the ones coaching so that they know who's going to be the next CFO.
Right.
And so the values absolutely drive that, because it drives your hiring decisions, it drives your operating decisions, et cetera, so that it's sort of the roadmap of how I anticipate you are not only behaving, but you are as a person when you're part of our team. And so I was working with a company the other day on sort of scripting their values as well. And we're being very, very conscientious in the words we choose, because there's nuance in what every word means. Right. And these are 20-something guys starting their second company. But the mission was easy for them. The values is what's taking time, because they want to be super clear on who they want by their side. Because they both know what they want to do, and it's not spending day in and day out running this company. They want the people there to be running the company, and it's a pretty cool thing to have to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, that is truly starting with the end in mind right there, right? Really trying to set it up so that you are building something that's sustainable without you.
Yep.
It's kind of what I'm hearing there, right?
Yeah, I mean, great companies have succession plans for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right, we got a couple more people that joined us. So we got Al. Good. Thank you for joining us, Al. We got George Ryman. It's simple. How can I help you achieve your goals and dreams? How can we work together to help the human species grow and evolve?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is dead on.
100%. Uh-oh, John picked up a comment. How do you prioritize when there are obviously so many problems to be solved?
That's a great question.
John, you answer that one, and I'll be buying.
Yeah, it's a good question though. It's the 80-20 rule, right? If you know why you're doing what you're doing, and this is where it's sort of, you focus on the big things and what's going to drive the biggest impact. And so many companies try and fix everything all at once, rather than understanding what's truly going to impact the end result. And the end result is not only their mission, but also then the bottom line. And that's where the profitability play comes in. There are so many places thinking short term today, when they're not at risk of losing their company tomorrow. If you're at risk of losing your company tomorrow, you absolutely should be thinking about short term. If your company is in good shape, yes, you may not deliver the same financial metrics you had planned, but you should not be thinking about, how do I save my company? You should be thinking about what my company looks like in a year.
Right. So with that, with marketing and sales, right here's the chicken and egg, question, right? If your company is not doing great, is it the marketing, or is it internal issues, or is it sales? There's all these questions, right, that you get as a marketer all the time, or get as a salesperson all the time. What have you seen, when the economy starts dropping, because we're headed for that at some point. Hopefully we're not, but we all know it comes. Do you cut? Is marketing the first thing you cut?
You're just talking about ad spend specifically?
I'm just talking just in general, marketing and influencing, and yeah.
No, my instinct says no. I've been in a position where I was overseeing both lines of the P&L before.
Right.
And the answer ideally is no, but marketing and sales should be working together to understand what you truly need. The first thing should never be innovation. That's
Right.
the bottom line. Is you should always be looking forward, and it shouldn't be line extensions or something like that. If line extensions is your innovation, then yes, cut innovation.
Right.
You should be focused on bigger picture innovation. But I remember very clearly when we had to take a budget cut, and we were sitting in a room 10 years ago and said, yep, we're going to just take an even percent across everybody's business. And now my mentor at the time came in and was incredibly disappointed with us and sent us back to work. And we learned a very hard lesson that day about prioritizing strategy. What's going to drive the biggest growth in the future, and how do you think about budgeting accordingly?
Right.
And
right.
we went back and we did the exercise and made sure all businesses stayed running, but certain businesses got a much bigger haircut than others because of the role they played in the organization and to the mission. And you make hard decisions, but marketing and sales very much have to work together. And anybody who thinks that they should be adamant enemies are not sort of understanding the role of coaches versus players. Everybody has to be on the same team.
We had a marketing guy on, Jen mentioned him here, Alex Sheridan. Have you? He does on LinkedIn.
No, that's awesome.
He does rap parodies. And one of them was marketing versus sales. And actually, some people may not like it, find it too young and hip, but what he's doing is actually really cool. It was fun to watch. We had him on the show and we played his video, but marketing versus sales. Jennifer, you got a good memory. That wasn't too long ago though. Better in my memory. You know what else is really good about this conversation, Miles?
What?
We don't have that much hair for somebody to cut. So
got my budget.
I don't know if that makes it any safer in the world of budget, but definitely not. Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, let's get back on cue. If anybody has any questions out there, please ask. Look at that. I mean, everything started going back up. I love watching this stuff as we talk. Goes down and goes up, goes down and goes up. All right, so we talked about teamwork. All right, let's talk about the things that we don't see, right? What are the things? It's what you don't see. Like, how do you look out for the things we don't see? Like, so, we were talking about this offline. Like, can you solve for all the problems? Can you figure out what the problems? Like, how do you see the problems you can't see?
It's tough. I think there's a couple of pieces. There's for sure agility that's happening, right? Is you write a year-long plan, and this year better than any year would show you that goes out the window. But there's a flexibility that takes place that you say, okay, hang on a second. How do I make sure that I can pivot when I need to? That everybody is working together. And I think externally, you often don't see the cross-functional teams working together. You don't see that you sit in a room and you say, hang on a second, let's talk about the real problem that's at hand. Because it's really easy to say, here's the solution, and it's the first one that comes to my mind, rather than reframing a problem completely, right? It's so easy to say, I don't have enough supply, and so let's solve, how do I get more supply, rather than saying, well, hang on, what's causing me not having enough supply? How do I reframe that entire perspective? And I think those are the true conversations that take place that make companies stronger in the end, that allow you to say, well, let me think. And you start again with your mission. What am I trying to accomplish? Am I trying to accomplish making sure I make my profit in the short term? Or am I trying to accomplish making sure I build the best homes and provide the best partnerships? What do those things look like? By the way, that was a terrible example because I don't like the word best. when I'm thinking about missions ever, because I think
Right.
it puts an endpoint to things. It directly compares you to somebody else and stops the innovation process. I think it's really, really important to be broader than that. But that idea, you don't see in the best companies those conversations of how do I reframe problems? How do I think outside the box?
Right.
Are you guys familiar with the term design thinking?
I am not.
Okay, so design thinking is one of my favorite terms, but the notion of it is, instead of just solving the problem at hand, essentially take a step back and understand all of the potential ways to see the problem in a different light. So it's just a very cool, it's a way to brainstorm almost, but
Right.
to create a different problem almost. So back to, am I solving the wrong problem? Oftentimes we're not solving the right problem because we stop by putting a Band-Aid on something instead of understanding the root cause.
Right.
Design thinking allows you to make sure you're digging in deep. It's a really cool way. It takes off all the guardrails, and then you eventually put them back on to see if something's doable. But it is truly a remarkable way to approach a problem.
Sure. Sure. Well, so I'm gonna go off track, because you do have a big home building, you
Absolutely.
understand the big home builders and what's happening out there. Can you give us an example of, from what you see, like what are home builders doing right? What are they doing wrong? I mean, is there anything in your mind that, or do you see anybody out there really just killing it with their branding and marketing?
I think it's a little bit misleading, because there's some really, really huge ones. And so you'd say, of course, they're killing it with their branding and their marketing. The challenge, and I don't know enough from the home builder's perspective to say, is somebody going to them because they're dying for that home builder, or because that home builder happens to be in the right location and the right price point, right?
Right.
And because of the way we understand that home buyers are making decisions, they're not starting with a builder. They're starting with a location and a price point, and then they are weeding out based on the builder. And so they're never first in that contemplation. So I'd argue that because of that, somebody's doing something wrong, or at least has an opportunity. I shouldn't say doing something wrong. They have an opportunity to do something better. I think the opportunity is to start saying, I make homes that you can only get from me.
Right.
And there's something really, really unique about that. So if there's certainly a design aesthetic, I think there's a whole new way that will be approached to sort of what healthy living actually means, right? I look at healthy eating and how many different segments have been approached. And historically, healthy living has only been sustainability and green. But there's this whole play about what safety is truly going to mean. And we're spending so much time inside our homes, and there's a whole new fear of what is floating around in the earth now.
Right.
That how can somebody go and take advantage of that? What does flexible living mean? And all of these things will come into play. How do you partner with builders that can be somebody that stay in your life longer than just an interaction? So I think that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity. Today, it is very much a one and done. And I built my house, and sure, that was my builder, and the experience is over after the year-long warranty ends.
Right.
So I think that's the opportunity, is how do you create a relationship that evolves over time?
Right. And a lot of builders don't focus on that. They focus on getting it done and then moving on.
Exactly.
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I love it. I love it. What do you think, Miles? I see the eye roll. That means Miles is thinking.
Yeah. So I was thinking about what you just said about best, backing up. You don't like the word best. And then what you just said about evolving over time. And it just makes me wonder, how often should the mission or the brand evolve over time? They're not static things, right? If we're personifying it, people grow, then brand should grow. How do you know when it's time to make a shift or a growth point? And then how do you go about it so you don't lose the brand equity you've built up until that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that they probably evolve every 5 to 10 years, but they're slight evolutions rather than dramatic shifts. And so a really well-built mission, if you sort of think about it, leaves enough leeway that allows for sort of that change. And that's why they're never so tight in that I stand for a product that is just as it lives. And it's never so broad that, like, I just want the world to be better. It has to be somewhere in between that. But because you don't know exactly what technology looks like, because most people couldn't have predicted, I would say most, because I'm sure somebody will say they did, but most people couldn't have predicted 2020 was going to look this way. Right. And so trends have probably expedited, right? I actually don't think they're entirely different than they would have been. They maybe just wouldn't have happened yet. But the notion that people wanted a home that became a place that you could spend more time or time differently isn't a crazy notion. And so the meaning of home has not truly evolved. And that's a good thing. But it's just changed a little bit. The same way the notion of a healthy home hasn't changed. It's just evolved. It doesn't maybe mean green anymore. And so being selective in the language you use that gives it enough elastic to allow it to stretch, but not so much that you can't fit in your pants anymore, is sort of the right way to think about it. And then you understand the selection you're making. And so that when you think about how you bring your brand to life, it needs to be modernized a little. And if you look at sort of some of the great brands and their logos over time, they've all been modernized, but they take subtle steps. They don't go and have these dramatic changes. So that if you look back 30 years, they may have changed 4 or 5 times, but parts of them have stayed very much the same and parts have evolved. So that you become accepting of it, but it also makes sense all at the same time.
Yeah. And I just even the buzzwords, Healthy Homes has a new meeting right now because of what's happening in the marketplace as well, right? Oh, in the world, not even the marketplace. Yep. So love it. All right, Miles, listen, we've been at this for over 46, 47 minutes already. You guys talk too much.
Sorry.
No, love it. Miles, what do you think? You want to take us out here?
Sure. Yeah. So thanks everyone for watching again. We'll be here again next week with another member. It's actually going to be someone that works for Stanley Black & Decker, all talking about branding and things again in a different perspective. So it's going to be awesome. And appreciate your time, Jenny. I know I learned something and I was already in the space. So it's just proof that, you're never done, right? There's always another viewpoint to see and perspective to take in, and changes the way we continue to show up within our own brands and companies.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, it's been absolutely wonderful having you, Jenny. I think the fact that you understand branding, you understand increasing influence, from a personal level as well as a company level, it's even an extra bonus that you understand it from the supplier home building side of the world, what you just kind of touched on and gave a lot of insight on. Hint, everybody out there, home builders, offsite construction, whatever it is, pay attention to your customers. It's very important that we pay attention to the end consumer. I've been in a business where, my saying is always this: if you don't have repeat customers, if you don't have referrals, you're a startup every year. Bottom line is how I look at it. And the only way you get that is by treating people the way you want to be treated and service the daylights out of them. Treat people as just like Apple and everybody else. Give them great service and you'd be surprised what comes out of it. So I love it. Jenny, it's been awesome.
Thank you guys. It was fun.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. That was an episode of Increasing Influence with Miles Biggs and Biggs Ideas and our special guest, brand creator, wizard of marketing, Jenny Mehlman was on the show. Jenny, I think we're going to have you come back in short order because I would love to see some creative ideas. Maybe we could show some demos on the screen one of these days, some of the stuff you work on. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do.
You got it.
Or if we get a volunteer, we pick apart the brand live. That'd be fun.
Brand picking. That's what we're going to call it. It'd be like the new show, Pickers, right? Brand Pickers. And that's a good idea. And we'll break down the brand live on the show. So, but listen, I really, really appreciate it. And so do other people out there. George said, great conversation. Thank you. Jenny, you have a wonderful day. Hang tight. We'll come back to you in just a few minutes. Miles, hang tight. Dave Cooper Live. Join us tomorrow at 1 o'clock for BS Friday. I can't get my words right. Building Science Friday tomorrow, 1 p.m. with the one and only bare naked Mark Willie. We'll see you guys next time. Bye now.